Hello and welcome to Haunted by the Past. Melbourne Haunts. Melbourne, the vibrant, bustling city of Victoria, known for the arts, theatre and great nightlife. It is a wonderful city that is often ranked amongst the world's most livable each year. Voted the world's most livable city, Melbourne is a beautiful destination and a popular choice for both international and interstate travellers. Melbourne was actually the capital city of Australia for 26 years between 1901 and 1927 before the capital shift to Canberra. Melbourne has the largest tram system outside of Europe and the fourth largest in the world overall. Melbourne was originally named Batmania, and the first ever set of traffic lights in Australia was installed in Melbourne. Until the year 1966, pubs in Melbourne closed at 6 p.m. Melbourne has the highest number of restaurants and cafes per number of people than any other city in the world. According to the Crimes Act of 1958, if you meet up with a pirate in Melbourne, you must not trade with them. Just some fun facts of Melbourne. But beneath Melbourne's surface, you'll find fascinating ghost sightings, gruesome goings-on, curious hauntings, and a general 19th century creepiness. Some of the city's most frequented and harmless sites have resident ghosts, such as the fisherman who casts a ghostly line at night from platform 10 of Flinders Street Station. Explore behind the hulking bluestone facade and tiny barred windows of the old Melbourne jail, walking the same cells and hallways, rattling the same iron doors as the unfortunate souls before you, including the famous bushranger Ned Kelly and the serial killer dubbed the Jack the Ripper of Melbourne, Frederick Bailey Deeming. This will be a separate episode where I will explore the lives of the criminals and the deeds that put them in jail. But back to this episode. On a recent trip to Melbourne, I visited some of the said to be most haunted sites. This was a whistle-stop tour, and I hope to go back and discover more at a later date. In this episode, I will talk about a young lady who silently cries desperate to be helped, and a lady in mourning after her lover. A Silent Cry, the Young & Jackson Hotel. Established in 1861 on the corner of Flinders and Swanston across from Flinders Street Station, the Young & Jackson Hotel has had its fair share of punters in and out of its doors. It's literally a popular haunt for many thirsty visitors. It's believed that one of its attractions, apart from the alcoholic refreshments, is an 1875 painting simply titled Chloe. Chloe is a painting of an attractive, unclothed young lady by the French artist Jules-Joseph Lebever and has graced the walls of the hotel since 1909. It was also the mascot of the Royal Navy HMAS Melbourne. The painting caused uproar and scandal because it revealed that women had actually got nipples. Good gracious! In 1988, the National Trust and Heritage of Victoria decided it must remain part of the hotel forever. But that's not the only woman to remain forever at this popular establishment. This lady is less likely to cause a scandal at an exhibition. However, she may cause your blood to run cold if you happened on her on your way out after a drink. In the early gold rush days of Melbourne, when the town was flooded with a rowdy crowd eager to make their fortune, all ended up drinking copious amounts of alcohol, depending on your social status, of course. Where better to go than the Young & Jackson Hotel? As you would expect, there will be many a colourful character frequent the hotel, as well as some dark and dangerous ones. On certain dark nights, by a lamppost outside the hotel's doors, a young, beautiful lady can be seen leaning against the post. Perhaps she's waiting for a gentleman friend to take her home. She has been described as being dressed in Victorian clothing and has been mistaken as one of the Young & Jackson's hotel employees, as a possible tourist attraction, as the building is quite old and of historical significance. Upon seeing her, you may feel the need to approach her and offer her assistance perhaps. However, it's reported on closer inspection that there is one detail not evident from further away. Here you will now become aware of the shocking red blood splashes and a look of despair in her eyes as she locks your gaze and mouths a silent, desperate cry for help. This beautiful young lady in the warm pool of light has had her throat slit from ear to ear. It is still not known who this tragic but beautiful girl is, just one of hundreds, even thousands of people to have passed the threshold of the Young and Jackson Hotel over the many years. Even if she could ask for help, it's not known what or how you could help her. It seems she's destined to just stand there, watching people go by, repeating an endless moment in time. Does she do this for revenge? Or is she looking for someone to help rest her soul by looking for justice for the person who took her life? One thing's for sure, as one beauty, Chloe, hangs inside as an object of admiration, the beautiful girl outside is left to find someone desperate to hear her cry. But of course, they can't, and so she's destined to repeat the last awful few minutes of her life forever in purgatory. So after last orders, and the last punter has left, don't linger too long, or you may just find out. The Mitre Tavern. According to legend, the bar staff are told of a lonely female that haunts the Mitre Tavern looking for her lost love. It's alleged that her once lover had gone back to his wife, and Connie, broken-hearted, hung herself in the tavern and now mourns their lost love. The beautiful spectre is said to be sometimes seen in a white dress, if lucky to see a full-bodied apparition, or sometimes a black shadow or a cocoon of light. This lonely figure is alleged to appear over the balcony and moving towards the Savage Club, where her lover, Sir Rupert Clarke, used to go. This is said to be Connie Waugh. But who is she? And is it really her? Constance Waugh Adams was born in 1880 and is said to be the daughter of Mornington Peninsula butcher. She is described often as being flame-haired with blue eyes, a retroussed nose, and a tall and willowy straight figure. Constance was an actress, and in social circles described as lower class, her stage name being changed to Connie Waugh. A fearless horsewoman and one of a few women with a London City Council certificate and expert motorcar driver, it's no wonder Connie caught the attention of Sir Rupert Havelock Turner Clarke, the son of the first Baronet of Australia. According to Punch magazine, on the 22nd of December 1910, Connie first met Sir Rupert Clarke on board a yacht that he had bought to make a cruise of the South Seas. A friend of Sir Rupert's had brought Miss Adams, as she was known then, for afternoon tea, and this is where the romance began. Sir Rupert's wife, Lady Amy Clarke, formerly Cumming, of Toorak in 1907, threatened to divorce Sir Rupert after an argument where he accused Amy of spending too much money, in which she is said to have wittily replied, "Well, if you can afford to keep your other woman, you can afford to keep me." Sir Rupert called her bluff by saying, "Well, divorce me then." So in August 1909, she did just that. At the trial, Lady Amy, then 42 years old, is said to have been supported by her mother and father and gave evidence with a quiet dignity. The trial revealed that Lady Amy and Sir Rupert both had two daughters, Phyllis Mary, aged 21, and Amy Gwendolen, aged 14. Lady Amy is said to have gone to England with their two daughters, whilst Sir Rupert conducted business at home. She stated in the divorce hearing that prior to leaving England for Victoria, she observed that his manner was frequently cold and indifferent towards her. Lady Amy named Connie Waugh as the woman her husband Sir Rupert had been carrying on with since 1902. It's alleged that since the celebration of their marriage and since the 8th of May 1890, Sir Rupert has been guilty of repeated acts of misconduct with the said Connie Waugh at various places around Melbourne. A witness in the hearing, a Mrs. Sedgwick, stated that during 1905, Connie frequently visited her house at night, where Sir Rupert made arrangements to pay for a bedroom there. It's alleged that he wanted a quiet room to which he could take a lady friend. Teresa Sedgwick of Chapel Street, Prawn, knew both Connie and Sir Rupert and said at the hearing she agreed to let Sir Rupert bring Connie to her then house, 376 Punt Road, South Yarra, where they regularly used her house, taking a room. She once took them tea and hot water, where she observed and gave evidence that they both shared the same bed. This continued until 1905. However, he wasn't very discreet when out and about in public with her and was frequently seen at the races, theatres and cafes together. Connie Waugh was well aware of Sir Rupert's fortune and wasn't shy in asking for money, or rather demanding money. A letter written in October 1908 from Connie to Sir Rupert read, "Dear heart, I think I will go over to Sydney for a few days. We'll leave by the next mail boat going round, if convenient. Be at your rooms. 4:30 tomorrow. I will call. Want some money. Yours, Connie." In March 1909, another letter read, "Dear Rupert, don't we dine tomorrow night? Savoy, 7 o'clock. Yours, Connie. P.S. Don't go to the old theatre afterwards." Sir Rupert is alleged to have sent money of up to £100 to her when she was in England, October 1907, then another £100 in November of the same year. Prior to her departure for England in 1906, Sir Rupert employed someone to buy a house for him, Rochester, in Ackland Street, St Kilda, where Connie lived rent-free up until March 1907, when she went to England. Sir Rupert was of a much higher social status than Connie, as she was regarded as lower class, being a working actress, and so it's alleged that she was never fully received in the very best of circles, including the races and other forms of frivolity, where it's said she dressed in the most outrageous fashion. The press didn't favour her either, and often picked on her clothes and the way she dressed. In 1906, Connie is said to have worn the following on Melbourne Cup Day at the races. The dress was of striped chiffon, black and white, with pink roses made over white, the hat being black chip straw with a feather a yard long in black and white and a bunch of white grapes in place of the buckle." End quote. After the divorce was granted to Lady Amy Clark, Sir Rupert was now free to marry again, and whilst on an Isle cruise in 1910, the rumour of marriage between Connie Waugh and Sir Rupert Clark was announced in the Melbourne papers 6th of December. Because on board the ship, Connie is said to have worn a bridal gown complete with a veil, and the ship was simply deluged with flowers. However, it later transpired that they were never officially married. But not all fairy tales have a happy ending, and all good tales must come to an end. This is where the heartbreak tale may have come in. In 1915, a Miss Ethel Byrne filed proceedings against Connie and filed for a £1,000 settlement for assaulting her one night, with help from George Cumming. Yes, the cousin of Lady Amy Clark, Sir Rupert's first wife. It's alleged that a fight ensued after a comment made by Ethel accusing Connie and George of sleeping together. Or possibly that Rupert and Ethel had been sleeping together. It's not entirely clear. However, the accusation of the fight and what Connie did to Ethel next was recorded in the newspapers. It's alleged that Connie threw copious amounts of red wine in Ethel's face and then grabbed her by the throat to throttle her, whilst George held Ethel's hands, or by some account held her down on the floor,
whilst Connie kicked and badly assaulted her. Sir Rupert was aware at the time of the assault, which actually took place in 1911, but it took 4 years in court to be settled. In the end, Sir Rupert settled out of court as Connie was too ill to stand trial and left the country from Australia to recuperate in 1914 on the ship Niagara. It's alleged that Sir Rupert sent Connie away to America and gave her the motorcar money, $2,000 a year, and land, La Aglon, Queen's Road, St Kilda, on condition she never returned to Australia. And just like that, the affair was ended. Sir Rupert went off to fight in the war in 1915 and returned to Australia in 1917 medically unfit, where he later married again in 1918, officially this time, age 53, a secretary 31 years his junior. They had 2 sons and 1 daughter together. The eldest son of this marriage succeeds to the baronetcy. Newspapers approved by describing his new wife as a charming and sensible damsel with a knowledge of interior decorating, end quote. He later died in Monte Carlo on Christmas Day in 1927. The First Lady, Amy Clark, also married again to Sir Philip Grey Egerton and became Lady Grey. But what of Connie War? Did she return to Australia and take a job as a barmaid at the Mitre Tavern, as the legend goes, where she later apparently took her own life? Let's find out. So look into the newspapers, we can track Connie now going under the name of Lady Constance Warr, spelled W-A-R-R, in 1915 as living in a chief hotel in Honolulu with a wealthy Hun, of course, a German plantation owner. An interesting article from the Lady's Letter, Mount Gambier, on the 3rd of July reads, "One night at dinner, the table were decorated with the flags of the Allies, and Connie and the Hun were dining. The German knocked a small British flag off the electric standard light onto the floor. Connie is said to have risen in all her majesty, dramatically pointed to the fallen banner and commanded the Hun to replace it. He did so grudgingly to around 300 people cheering Connie War. Connie evidently has a new motto, excuse the pronunciation, or Pax or Bellum, which translates to peace or war," end quote. Eventually, Connie turns up in newspapers in 1925, where she attended a race event at Moody Valley. Again in 1927, Connie was back in the newspapers for having a dispute with a plumber in court. And finally in 1947, it was recorded that Connie was in South Australia attending a party at the governor's residence, where she was now in her late 60s. And then, nothing else can be found about her in the newspapers. No record of death, no record of working at the Mitre Tavern. There surely would have been at least a coroner's report available if the legend of taking one's life were true. A theory put by Ben Oliver of Drinking History Tours of Melbourne, when interviewed by In Black and White's podcast Twisted Tale of Melbourne's Mitre Tavern, is that the rumours were started by either supporters of the Clark family or the Clark family themselves to slur Connie War's name. So if this isn't Connie War, then whose apparition is caught wandering the tavern? The only recorded female death I can find on all newspapers was on the 28th of March in 1914, and remember, Connie War is still alive around this time, and that was Mrs. N. Flannery of Melbourne, and it's a death notice in the newspaper, in the Tribune in Melbourne. It goes, "It is with extreme regret that we have to record the death of Mrs. N. Flannery of the Mitre Tavern Hotel, Chancery Court, which occurred at her residence on Wednesday the 18th of March. The deceased lady, who was of a most kindly and charitable disposition, always took the greatest interest in Catholic and national affairs, and her sympathy and material assistance could always be relied on when a deserving object was in view. She was for 12 years a resident of the city, and during that time was remarkable for her great devotion and regular attendance at St. Francis's Church." So could the apparition that people believe they see in a female figure is actually Mrs. Flannery? Who knows? Next time you're in Melbourne, pop down for a pint and see if you can see the spirit of a lady. Is it Connie or is it Mrs. Flannery? Who knows? This has been part 1. I'm sure there's going to be a few parts to this,
there's so many great stories in Melbourne, but this video is getting too long with all the history of Connie, so look out for part 2 and possibly 3. Thanks for listening. Stay spooky.